everyone, welcome back to Myra Lorraine, my YouTube channel. Thank you all for stopping in to watch my videos. You know I appreciate it. Now this video has been an extremely long time coming, and I apologize for the length of time it's taken me to get this so long up, but oh my gosh, they are so much work. I give my hats off, big hugs, mwah, kisses to all of those who do sew-alongs all the time, because they are truly a labor of love. But anyways, this video is going to be extremely long. And the reason why is I didn't even think about it, just started recording. And I could have segmented it by days, like the lovely Liz Sews and some of the other people who do these types of tutorials. But I did mine all in one shot. And what I did do for you is down in the description box, if you're going to be following along with this and you don't think you want to do the whole, I think it's an hour and 30 minutes, I've put markers down below with the titles. And they actually refer to each step in the instructions. So that should help you if you have to come back. You can just hit the link in the section that you left off. So let's get into talking about this now. Okay, first off, the sew-along pattern that I'm doing is the Orange Lingerie Mystic Bra. And it came about by a requester, and her name was Tamela, I believe it was. I'll pop it up on the screen. But she left a comment quite some time ago. She left a comment asking me if what I think about doing a tutorial on this particular bra. Well, I don't do tutorials, you guys. I'm not an expert. I just sew because I love to sew. So I'm just gonna call this a sew along. If you wanna call it a tutorial, be my guest. But when she left that comment for me, I actually responded to her. But before I did that, I went out to look to see if I could find my favorite person who makes bras. Everybody knows that already, Liz Sews. I went to see if she actually had a tutorial, because what I would have done was referred her to that rather than reinvent the wheel. Unfortunately, Liz did not have one that I found in her playlist for this particular bra. And I did need a t-shirt style bra, one that didn't have lace included, but it was just the foam cups so that you don't see the lace through the t-shirts. So I responded to her and I told her what I just told you. So I would go ahead and do it. And that's why I'm doing it. Am I happy that I did this particular bra? Yes, I am. Because I am actually wearing it right now, and you don't see any lace or anything. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a review before you get into this tutorial. Now, the pattern itself, without me having to record myself, is probably gonna be a quick one like my other ones too. It might even be a little bit quicker because my other ones actually have multiple pieces to the cup. This particular pattern did not include a cup pattern. It actually only has 3 pieces. I had them cut out here. I don't know if you could see them. Yeah, 3 pieces. The back band, the side band, and the bridge. The cup is actually a foam cup that you purchase. It's already a pre-made foam cup. And there is no template in there for the covering of that. They just tell you to make sure you cut out a piece of scrap fabric that's big enough with about 1.5 inch extension outside of the foam cup for ease of working with. So when I saw that, first off, the first thing you think of, now I have a lot of Orange Lingerie patterns, and I will put it up here, but if you don't have this particular Mystic Bra pattern, but you do have the Lansdowne pattern, which I do have, they look identical except for the cup. And since this pattern doesn't include a cup, you don't really need it if you have the Lansdowne. And that's just my thought on it. Now, and I mentioned as far as sewing, it goes together very quickly. If you weren't recording it, it goes probably quicker than my other bras. there is one thing that I noticed, and I'm looking down at my notes so I don't forget anything. There is one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if I'll be able to get you guys to see it, but let me see, and I hate zooming in on my boobies, but I have to so that you guys can see it really well. Notice how you see the lip line here, and a part of it could be because I'm wearing my t-shirt I just made, and it's a rayon jersey, so they're pretty thin. If you had a thicker one, you probably still would see this line. It doesn't bother me a lot, but I would prefer it not be there. So I'm gonna work on it to see what I can do for that. And just so you guys know, you'll see in the tutorial, this is the bra that I just made. I love making my own bras because they are absolutely comfortable. Because I have gotten a fit. Let me go back down so you can see. I love the support on it. Girls are up at attention. And I really like that they don't dig into my body. I had this t-shirt on in a review that I did for the t-shirt, and I had on one of my old ready-to-wear bras, and it was really tight, and I think I put that picture up here. The back of it, you could see how it digs into the bag. It was so uncomfortable, but that was the last t-shirt bra I had. Now I have another one, thank goodness. And thank you to Myra for pushing me to do this particular bra. But that bra was really uncomfortable. This one is not. It's very comfortable. I can see wearing it all day. Most of my bras I do wear all day because they're that comfortable. So this one is a great one. I give it a thumbs up for the Mystic bra. The only thing, as I mentioned, is this, and I don't know if I need to go up a bra size because I'm not really spilling out of it. I'm not. It is a demi type where it comes down to here, but I just don't like that lip. It's not something, I shouldn't say don't like. It's something that's there and I can see it, but you know, I would prefer it not be there, but it's not something that's going to seal the deal for me making this particular bra. So that's my review on this bra. I am going to get out of the way and let you follow this video. I hope you like it. Again, I apologize for the length of it, and enjoy yourself, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye now. Okay everyone, I have everything cut out already that you'll need for this project, and I want to share it with you and go through the list to make sure that we have everything. This is everything that you need for making this Mystic bra by Orange Lingerie. Now I'll tell you that the things that I have here are leftover scraps mostly, and just leftovers from other projects. The only thing I purchased new was the channeling, the underwire channeling, because I didn't have any extras long enough for this project. So I'll go ahead and go through the list of the things that we have here. First off, there's this 3/8 inch elastic, and you'll need 1 yard of this, as well as 1 yard of a wider elastic, and it's the Pico elastic. You can see the differences in the sizes of these. This one should be a 1/2 inch wide. I think mine may be a little bit bigger than that, but that's okay. You'll also need 1.25 yards of strap elastic. That's what I have here, and it's some leftovers that I'm going to be using, as well as I think for the plush, you need 1 yard of the plush underwire casing. You'll also need your hook and eye set, which there is a hook and eye there. They're hooked together, so you can see that. And then you'll need your underwires, of course, which I have right here, fitted to your size, as well as 2 sets of sliders and rings, which are right there. Now this pattern also calls for 2 strips of stabilizer. I'm actually using regular purchase bias binding. It's just a bias tape that I purchased, and again, these are some leftovers. I measured them according to the instructions in the pattern instructions. Now you'll also need your foams, your bra cups, foam here. And I got these from, I believe it was Bra Builders. I'll put that information up on the screen. But yes, I have these, as well as some scrap material that I have left over. And this scrap material that you use to cover these should be stretched. It should have a good amount of stretch both ways, so it should be a 4-way stretch. And I have 2 scrap pieces here for covering that bra foam. Okay, now let's talk about the pattern pieces. I have here the back band, and you'll see on my back band, I actually had to cut it right down the middle and resize it for my fit. And I did that because I know my size in the orange lingerie, and I knew I would have to do that. This is the bridge, and the third piece you'll need from the pattern is the side band. Now, with the side band, I cut out, as they stated, to cut out 1 set in the fashion fabric. I chose to cut out 1 set in the lining too, because I like to line mine. And I'll show you all of the sewing techniques that I do with this. Same thing here. I cut out 1 piece of the bridge in the fashion fabric and 1 piece in the lining material as well. Now with the back band, I actually cut out 2 pieces of power mesh, 1 for each side, but I also cut out a piece of scrap because I want it to be covered, because I want this bra to be all one color going across. So those are all the pieces that we need to build this bra. So let's go ahead right now and let's go build this bra. Okay, here you guys is how I marked mine. I put a little red T on the inside of both of my cups where I saw the tops were as illustrated. And that way, this is actually one of the friction pins, so it'll be removed with a little steam or something like that. So that's how I marked mine. And mark yours however you would like to mark yours so that you can see it throughout the process. Okay, now, because foam cups can't be folded, it shouldn't be folded and sewn, they want you to attach some stabilizer along the bottom of the cup, like grate seams or something like I'm using here, which is just a plain purchase bias tape. And knowing that these are 1/4 inch seams, you want to put that on a 1/4 inch seam, 1/4 inches down, as you can see right here. It's about a 1/4 inch down. That I'm actually going to sew this on, and you're going to zigzag stitch. I'm going to go ahead and pin this all the way across, and I've already pinned this one, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch that. I'm going to pin this other one, and then I'm going to go ahead and stitch that, and I'll show you when I get to the stitching. Okay, now that I have this all pinned, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this, and I'm going to stitch it kind of reverse so you guys can actually see what I'm doing here. I'm going to hopefully not get my head in the way. I've changed my stitch length on the sewing machine to be a width of 2.5 millimeters, and the length will be 2.0 as recommended in the instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this bra, so we're going to go ahead and stitch this. Okay, we have that stitched out now, and it's you can see the stitching there. It's a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to trim this extra edge off here so you can see that. And now we have the stabilizer attached. Now the reason that they do this stabilizer, because that's actually where the underwire is going to go in, and because we can't stitch through the foam, we're going to stitch that underwire casing on this seam allowance. So now what we have to do is prepare this for that. So that's going to be the next step. Now to help us make the seam allowance for the underwire, we have to mark the seam allowance 1/4 inch away from the edge of this, and I have it turned, this is the inside, so this is the right side that we're looking at. I found it easier to do it on the right side for measurements, but I turned it to the right side, and I'm putting it on this ham. Let me turn it so you guys can see it a little better. I'm putting it on this ham here, so that it's easier for me to mark. But it has to be, as you see, I've started already. Let me bring this up so you can see it. Marking 1/4 inch from the edge of the foam, and I'm actually making a mark right on the seam tape. So I'm going to do that all the way around. I've done this one already, as you can see. I have the 1/4 inch mark all the way around, and I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Okay, now that we've marked that seam allowance, I'm just going to cut off the excess from the bottom, so we just have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Hopefully you can see that. So we just have that 1/4 inch seam allowance remaining on the bottom of this bias tape, because we don't want too much of a seam allowance there, because they want it to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to trim this off, and you guys bear with me because I'm actually new at this. This is my muslin that I'm making, and I just decided, it might be a mistake, but I decided that I was going to do my muslin while showing you guys. Okay guys, we're ready to start step 4, covering these foam cups. We're going to cover them with your fashion fabric. Now I've selected this scrap, and you should have something that we discussed earlier that has a really nice stretch to it, and I have this 4-way stretch. It's a rayon jersey I left over from my husband's t-shirt. But anyways, I've marked as you can see that line there, I've actually marked the wrong side to help me with this covering. And so they suggest that you use a tailor's ham to do this, and I have mine here. I have my little ham here, but I'm also going to use one of my bowls to help me stabilize and hold this while I'm trying to pin it around. So that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to put this on, and as you notice, this is the inside where we have our bias tape sewn on, and they want you to put the covering on the right side, and they want you to align the top edge, which you can see there. This is the top edge. Hold it correctly so you can see it. This is the top edge of the foam cup. Well, they want you to align your fabric with the greatest stretch along that top line. Now they don't want you to just line it up like this. They want you to go ahead and have at least 1.5 to 2 inches all the way around, excess all the way around the foam cup. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this with the top facing me. This is the right side of the foam, and this is the right side of the fabric. And I'm going to make sure first that I have enough room all the way around my foam before I start to do anything. Let's pull this over a little bit because I do have a little more on this side. And you guys will probably cut yours a lot better than I did. I just cut off a piece of scrap here because this is my muslin, and I want to make sure I didn't want to use any fabrics that I purchased purposely to make a bra and then ruin them. Besides, we're not going to ruin this. We're going to think positive. Okay, so now that I have it on, it looks like I have enough room all the way around my foam cup. I can see the line of my cup here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can actually see it, so I know basically where the fabric is. So now what I'm going to do is start to pull out the wrinkles and pin it. They don't want you to pull it really super tight. They just want you to get the wrinkles out. And use lots of pins. So that's what I'm going to start to do right now, is I'm going to go ahead and pin this. Also, one of the things here is that what they want you to do when you're pinning this, don't try and pin it all the way through the foam or into that. They just want you to pin it enough to hold it to the foam and keep the fabric to the foam, but not through the foam cup. You don't want to do anything that's going to deform the foam. The foam. Okay, now I've pinned it all around and it looks like I got pretty much all of the wrinkles out of that, and I'm pretty happy with it right now. So we're going to move to the next step. Okay, now it's time for step 5. We actually have to mark the top edge of the fabric along the line of the top of the foam is what they want you to do. So this is the right side, as you guys see. I'm actually going to flip it over. This is the bottom, and this is the bottom, and this is the top. And what they want you to do, this one is kind of difficult to do. Not difficult, but it's a little taxing. Is to mark along this line here, marking where your center front, and that's your center front right here. This is your center front. And then marking here where your underarm is, and that's going to be your underarm. You can indicate that by this long side piece here. So I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to mark using my Ultimate Marking Pencil. It's not the greatest to mark on knits. It actually shows up and does really well, but trying to get the mark, if you guys can see that along the edge there, the fabric wants to stretch as you pull it. I'm actually making sure this is taut so that I get the line right along the edge of the foam. And I'm marking that here so you guys can see. And then after I finish this line, I'm going to go ahead and mark the center section. They want it to line up with the foam and the fabric, and I'll show you that in just a second. Let me get this mark here. And I like using this Ultimate Marking Pencil because it will stay there. It's not, unlike chalk, it won't brush away. Heat will make it go away, so you can use steam from an iron or what have you, but we're marking on the inside of this, so it's not going to show either way. Okay, so now that I have, as you guys can see here, hopefully you can see that. I'll bring it up so you can see it. I have that mark. I have that marked along the line. Hopefully you can see that. Trying to bring it in the light so you can see that. Now what I'm going to do is make a mark partly through the center, and I think my center is roughly about right here, and I'm just guess marking. I guess what is important here is you want to make your mark here on your foam. Now I'll show you that. I have my mark here on my foam, and then I'm going to take this and mark right along the top of that so that I know that those two have to match when I'm putting them together. That's what I'm guessing that they're asking you to do. So I'm going to make a mark here, and you guys want to pay attention to my crazy marks because I'm trying the best I can with this knit. So as you can see there, I have 2 marks. I actually have one here, and this one matches along that line. Now the other thing they want you to do is mark where your underarm will be, the underarm, so you know which side is which. So I'm actually going to make an extended mark here on this end to let me know that that is the underarm area. I'll let you guys see that. So I have 2 marks. I have one here marking the underarm and one matching there. So the notch here in underarm and the center point. And then I have my line along there. After that, what they want you to do, and I use this mark, this is a friction pin. For those of you who don't recognize it, I believe most of you know what this is already. And that will go away with heat as well. So once you've done that, they want you to flip it back over, and they want you to remove all of the pins. Wow, that seems such a waste, but I guess of time to do that, but we'll see. We're going to put this together as they instructed. So I'm going to remove all of the pins again. And now we have these separated, and as you can see, I have my marks here. I have my underarm and the center, and this edge is the center front. Okay, so now time to move on to step 6. Okay, now guys, it's time to start step 7. They want us to take the right side of the fabric, and as you know, I have my markings here, so that's the wrong side. Well, we want to place the right side of this fabric to the wrong side of the form. And what you're going to do is align your markings to the top edge of the foam. And you want to make sure that this mark that you have for the center and this one for the underarm matches the center mark here and the underarm section here. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and pin these. I'm going to start with the center. And what they want you to do is pin this on so that it's aligned 1/8 inch down from the top edge of the foam. And that's where you're going to sew it. So I'm going to put this line approximately, first off, I'm going to start with the center, and I'm actually going to put those two marks together. This mark with this one. And I'm going to pin it approximately 1/8 inch down from the edge. And I can feel that with my finger. And I'm going to estimate, if you guys want to measure it, you can go ahead, but I'm going to estimate here because that's what I do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pin that center one first. And then I'm going to go over here to the arm edge, and I'm going to make sure that that matches up, that notch matches up with that arm edge, and approximately 1/8 inch down from the edge of the foam. And then what I'm going to do is fit everything else in between that. And then this edge, I'm actually going to mark, and you want to make sure that you keep your seam binding, that it doesn't fold up on you, because you're going to be sewing across that. Make sure it's straight, it's laying flat. So I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to put it over here at the center front. And I'm going to make sure that that edge meets that corner and 1/8 inch down from the top edge of the foam. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here. And now what you want to do is making sure that this is all flat. If you want, I'm going to, because it makes it easier to sew, is I'm going to go ahead and pin this 1/8 inch down from the upper edge in between the other pins that I actually did. And again, you don't have to try and get that pin all the way through the foam. Just making sure that it holds the fabric to the foam. And that's what I'm doing. Just trying to get it in there so that it holds it tight. So when we go to sew, we don't have any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Fast forward through down here. Looks like we got a little extra room in there. I'm not sure how it happened, but I'm going to make sure that it's even. Yes, that's where we went wrong. We need to go to the edge of the bias tape, and I didn't do that. I want to bring that edge of that line all the way to the end of the bias tape, or your whatever stay tape you're using. Remembering to keep it 1/8 inch down. So I'm actually going to tape through my bias tape there so you guys can see that I've actually pinned through my bias tape. Hopefully you can see that. And then that way I take these pins out because I'm going to have to move this over a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. I gotta remember to keep it in view so you guys can see it. Bring it 1/8 inch down. And I might have to move my little center mark over a little bit because it looks like I stretched this. And that's what you don't want to do, is stretch your fabric too much where your lines don't match up. Let's move this over a little here too. Okay, making sure that it's 1/8 of an inch down. Trying to get all these wrinkles out of here. Making sure that it's 1/8 of an inch down. And if you have to move your pins around to adjust it so that it fits nicely, go ahead and do that. For me, this is a muslin, so I'm going to get it the best that I can because I want a good fit and I want it to look nice. I'm hoping that this is going to be a wearable muslin, so bear with me here while I get these pins in here. Okay, I think I have them all in and it looks pretty straight. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make sure it's lined up, and that's what I'm doing. I'm checking back here to make sure that mine is 1/8 of an inch down and it's right at that mark. And it looks like it is. And that's where I'm going to start sewing. Okay, right there. I can actually feel it. You guys, hopefully you can see that. And I have my stitch length at 3.0 and the width is a 4.0, and that's pretty good for me. So and that is millimeters. Okay, I'm just going to back tack to start, and I'm going to feel just to make sure that my line is in the right place, feeling the edge and looking at my marking line to make sure that I'm going to be in the right place, because I really do not want to take this apart. We don't want any nip having to take anything apart. So let's go ahead and sew this. Okay, now what they want you to do is to trim away the excess that you have. They want you to trim away, looks like I missed some, you guys, and that's where you have to be careful. And I'm showing you guys even my boo-boos. If you see that, look along the edge here. Right here I actually missed. So because the rest of this is actually attached, I'm going to, and next time I might do mine from this side so that I can see it easily. But I'm going to go ahead and correct this, and then I'll come back because it looks like my battery is flashing, and I'll show you guys about trimming off the excess. Be right back. Okay, now we're back. I went ahead and I stitched that area where I had missed it. So now what we have to do, continuing on with step 7, is trim away the excess from the top, where we sewed from the top of this. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to trim away the excess, which there's quite a bit. I have more than 1.5 to 2 inches. But I'm just going to trim that away. So right here, making sure I'm not cutting anything underneath. I've been known to do that, and we don't want to do that here. And I tell you, this is definitely a labor of love, you guys, because you're teaching me how to teach you, because I'm not sure about this. That's why I'm doing my muslin right along here with you so you can see what I'm doing. My mistakes and everything, I'm putting it right out there for you all. But I'm doing it for you because I love you guys. So I've trimmed away the excess, and now it wants you to turn it the wrong side of this to the right side of the foam cup, so that you can see now we actually have that little top edge. This is the top edge of your bra, and it looks very nice. If you can see, we have that little edge there. Okay, now it's time to move to step 8. We're going to be repinning this down to smooth it on the opposite side. So here we go. Okay, now it's time. I'm using my hem here again. Let's reposition so you can see me really good. See what I'm doing. Got rid of my little bowl here because I think it's going to be easier to do it this way. And what they want you to do is smooth this back over the edge of your, making sure that you have your seam allowance straight there. But smooth it back over the foam cup. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and pin this here down. Okay, now that we have the foam all pinned in and smooth, they want you to turn it to the inside. Hopefully you can see that. And they want you to mark along this edge here of the this is your underarm. Whoops, this is your underarm side. They want you to actually mark along that. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Just going to make a mark right along that, right along that edge. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to get this mark here. Okay, there's our mark we have along that side edge. And then what they want you to do is go ahead and sew your fabric to this seam allowance. They want you to sew your fabric to the attached seam allowance that we actually made here. And sorry guys, mine is in black. Hopefully you can see that. But they want you to attach the fabric to that seam allowance using a zigzag stitch. So that's what I'm going to do next. But I have to say to you, looking at this, I'm not sure why we went ahead and added that seam, stay tape here that they wanted. I use bias tape because to me it makes sense just looking at this in this step 8. They want you to sew it down here. Wouldn't it have been easier to just stitch this fabric down without the tape, stitch this fabric down to the seam allowance here, not the seam allowance of the 1/4 inch seam allowance of the foam itself, rather than put this extra step, the extra layer of this bias tape here? I would have just stitched it down at this point, and then I would have extended your fabric when you trim this off to the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you only have just the one layer. Now we have the 2 layers here of the bias tape and this fabric. Hopefully that makes sense. But I would have just not, I would have actually eliminated the step of sewing this stay tape. This is just my thought right now. And if I do this again, and if this turns out well and I do it again, I may show you guys in another video what I'm talking about here, because it would just make sense. I don't know if this is going to add a lot of bulk, but I hope not. But I'm going to go ahead and stitch this fabric to the attached seam allowance as they stated. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we're going to start stitching this on here. Now, for the purpose of me sewing the fabric to the seam allowance, I'm using a zigzag stitch length of 2.0 millimeters and a width of 2.5 millimeters. Okay, we stopped here because they want you to keep the underarm free. They don't want you to stitch that down, so I ended it here. And from this point now, what they want you to do is trim this fabric up to the attached seam allowance. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is trim that off. Okay, I've trimmed off that fabric to match the attached seam allowance. And now here, what they want you to do on this side is make a mark, mark this, or trim this 3/8 inch, and this is the underarm section. They want you to trim this 3/8 inch from your mark, and that means so that you have a 3/8 inch allowance here on this side. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to eyeball it because that's what I do, but if you want to be exact, you go ahead and measure that. Okay, oops, a little bit off kilter right there. Okay, I trim mine 3/8 inch, so that's what we have here. And when I flip it over to the right side, it looks like we have a nicely covered, smooth covered foam cup, which looks nice. Well, hopefully this will continue to work this good. Now on to step 9. Okay, now for step 9. they want you to cut 2 pieces of your smaller elastic, which is a 3/8 inch picot elastic, as you guys can see that I have here. Hope you can see that, the picot edges. And keeping the soft side up towards you. Mine actually has soft on both sides, but the softest side you want up. And you want to start approximately right on the edge, if you can see that, and keep it close to the edge of the fabric. We're not going to attach it to the foam here, just to the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this on here. Keep myself in frame so you guys can see me, and I'm just pinning it so that I can hold it while I sew. I'm going to be pulling these pins out. And as far as the measurements, what you do, and let me talk about, I should have talked about that first before I started to pin this on. I'm getting ahead of myself. But what they want you to do is, for your measurements, is you lay your elastic along this underarm edge, and then giving yourself at least adding 1.5 inches to that length from here to here, and then adding 1.5 inches. My strip here measured at 5 inches exactly. So I'm starting at the bottom of the cup, and I'm placing that there along the edge of the fabric. And I'm not pinning this. They don't want you to sew it to the foam, just to the fabric. So I'm pinning this down so I can hold it in place while I get it under the pressure foot so that I can sew it. So let me get a pin here. Move this out of the way. And let's get this on the sewing machine. And this is a zigzag stitch. And what they want you to do is sew a zigzag stitch close to the picot edge without going over the picot, but as close as you can get it. And that's what I'm going to do, not sewing through the foam. So you're basically going to be sewing through that 3/8 inch seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance that you trimmed off here on the edge of the underarm. So let me go ahead here. I'm getting twisted up trying to show you guys. And I'm going to start my zigzag very close to that. Now I'm using a dark colored thread. You guys are going to see it, and I know it's going to show on my strap, but this again is my muslin. If this were my actual bra that I'm making, and you guys should use the matching thread. So please disregard the dark thread that you'll see here. It's just for the purpose of showing you guys what I do. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my picot elastic to the fabric. And I want to make sure, I'm trying to keep sure that make sure that I am not sewing it to the foam. I have my stitches set at a 2.5 millimeter width and a 2.0 millimeter length. Okay, let's finish this. Hopefully you guys can see that. Trying to make sure that I am not sewing it to the foam, and so far I am not. And this excess is going to be your connection to your bra strap. That's why you want that extra left on top here. This is actually going to be a piece that's going to connect to your bra strap. So now that I have that stitched just to the seam allowance, I'm going to trim some of these threads off here. And the next step they want you to do is they want you to stabilize this strap here. Because it's actually going to be attached to your bra strap, they don't want it to stretch, get stretched out of shape. So they're recommending that you stabilize it. And how you stabilize it, I'm actually, looks like I didn't get it all the way. I sure didn't. You guys excuse me a minute while I get this fixed. I didn't get it sewn all the way to the seam allowance, if you can see that. So what I'm going to do is place this back up here, because I want to make sure that it's all there. And remember, I said this is my muslin, you guys, and I'm showing you mistakes and all. Okay. we go. Now it's fully attached. Okay. Sorry about that little mishap there. Okay. Now, to stabilize this piece here, they want you to use a stabilizer. I'm actually going to use here my stay tape. And they just want you basically 3/8 inches. Let me move over. 3/8 inches, starting 3 inches below the edge of this to the top. That's where you're going to place your stabilizer. So measure out that amount. Oh, hopefully you can't see that. This stabilizer is really very, very sheer. So, oops, 3/8 inch below the edge to the top of this. And I'm going to trim this off. Use the right tool for the job. And then what you do is you just, I'm going to move it away. If you can see that, I'm moving it away from my picot edge. So it's going to stick out more on this outer edge here because I don't want the stabilizer showing on my picot straps here. And I'm just going to continue to sew across that edge, and I'm going to come and meet to the previous zigzag stitching. And I'll show you that in just a second. You won't be able to see the stabilizer that much because it's so sheer. Okay. I'm sorry if you guys, I had my hands in the way, but I was trying to get this on here. I know it looks kind of crazy right now, but I think you guys will get the point. Whoops, just trimming some threads here. And now that I have the stabilizer on there, you guys can see that stabilizer. Hopefully you can see that stabilizer is on there. I'm actually going to trim that little excess that's sticking out so that I don't have anything stabbing me when I have this on. Because I'm praying that it's going to be a wearable muslin, even with the dark stitching line there. Because I don't have any good t-shirt bras. So there it is. It's now stabilized and it no longer stretches at all. It stretches down here, but not here where the strap's going to connect. Okay, now at this point, and we're still in step 9, what they want you to do is turn this to the inside. And you see I did a blue, so I have a little peekaboo of scalloped light blue on the edge. And they want you to do a small fail stitches along the inside. Don't stitch through the foam because you don't want any stitches to show on the outside, but they just want you to basically hand stitch. And let me see, I have a needle here, and again you guys are going to see black thread, but they basically want you to just do some small stitches, and I'll show you a couple of them here. You can see that. And I'll come across really quick. One thing I don't like doing a whole lot of is what you see me doing right now, and that is this hand stitching. That's something I really don't care to do, but I'm going to do it because that is a part of this. And I'm trying to make sure that I have this lined up right along. And I'm just grabbing up a little bit of the fabric of the foam, if you can see that. Just a tiny bit. And then the elastic. And so what it looks like, and I finished the first one, and I'll show you so you won't have to go through all of this with me. I'll finish this up off camera. I give one more stitch so you can see what I'm doing here. It's like that. I'll finish that off on camera. I have the other one finished, and it just ends up looking like that. And once you're done, then you have your little picot edge on that side, and you have your strap again. Please disregard my black thread there. And it looks like we have a finished smooth cup, and that looks really nice. It looks really nice for my first try ever. So that's it. Now we place the cups aside and we start to work on the bridge. Okay guys, now we're at step 11, which is starting the bridge. Now I have my lining piece and my fashion fabric. I have a little X here, as you can see on my piece. That just tells me what the wrong side of it is. So we put right sides of the bridge together, and we're actually, let me put it down here where you guys can see it. I actually can't see it, you can see it up here. Okay, right sides together of the bridge. Let me do it where you can see it. Right sides together, and we're going to be stitching across the top of the bridge here. Right sides, the lining and the fabric together. So I'm just going to pin those. And this is step 11 for those of you who haven't seen it. All right. Come on here. You can see that. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and stitch that together. And then once it's open, I'm going to finger press that down, and then I'm going to understitch it to the lining side. So let me go do that, and let's get on here. And again, we're doing our small 1/4 inch seam. Okay, now I've actually sewn them together, and I've understitched the seam allowance to the lining part. Now we're ready to move to step 12. Okay, now step 12. They want you to take your bridge, and with right sides together, they want you to sew the bottom area here of the lining and the fabric together. Remember, this is right sides together, so I'm going to do that right now. 1/4 inch seam allowance. And once you've done that, let me clip these threads here. Then they want you to turn it to the right side. Tiny little piece here. And once you turn it to the right side, it's going to look like this. And what they want you to do is press it flat. I don't like pressing this nylon, so I'm going to finger press it as best I can here. As you see, I'm kind of finger pressing it there. And you'll see that you have these little clips on these little pieces that stick out on either side. They want you not to clip those off right away for ease of handling this little bridge piece. But what they want you to do is base the side edges down right now, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now that's what it looks like. The lining is actually basted on the side edges. I'm going to cut these threads off, and then we're going to move to step 13. I believe the bridge is done at this point. Let me trim these off, and I'll get our pieces ready for step 13. And that's our bridge. Okay, step 13. You can see my pieces here. I will move this over so you can see a little bit better. Okay, this is the back band, and this is my power, my what they call the power mesh, and this is what I use for the back band. There's one for each side here. I'm actually going to cover mine with the fashion fabric, and I have 2 pieces, one for each side here. What step 13 wants you to do is to attach this side bar right here. Let's see if you can see that. Oh, put it somewhere where you can see it here. Okay, this is the side bar, and I have those in fashion fabric here as well. I have 2 for each, but they want you to attach the side bar to the back band. And that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do mine a little different because they just have the side, probably the fashion fabric and the power mesh for the sidebar. But I'm going to line my sidebar with this lining piece. The fashion piece will be on the outside, and then this. And I'm going to sandwich that in between the covered pieces so that there's no seam allowance. So that's what I'll be showing you in this step. Now in step 13 of the instructions, you're not going to have two pieces for each. You're not going to have, you'll have your fashion fabric, probably not the lining, but you'll have these two. You'll have your fashion fabric for the sidebar and your power mesh. And that's all that they're requesting. But I want to line mine, so I'm actually going to do mine a little different in this video. So follow along with me. Okay, now we're going to start to construct the sidebar to the actual back band. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have my power mesh. I'm actually going to put the wrong side of the fashion fabric onto the power mesh, just like that. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm going to take the fashion fabric of the sidebar, right sides together, and I'm going to turn it like this and put it on top of this. I'm going to be sandwiching in that power mesh. I'm going to pin those together. Hopefully you can see that. Bring this in so you can see it. Here we go. And I'm going to pin those together. And then I'll show you a close-up before I start to sew so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. And I got this tip from Liz Sews. She does hers this way, and I like the way because it encloses all of the seams right inside. So I'm going to flip it over and take my lining of the sidebar, which is what I have here, and I'm going to place that on the side with the power mesh, and I'm just going to repin that together. Actually, let me just put it on this side since we're on this side. Okay, now what you're seeing is I actually have on this side, I have the fashion fabric sidebar, and I have the fashion fabric side panel here, and the fashion fabric back band. And then on this side, I actually have the lining fabric, as you see here, for the sidebar, and I have the power mesh for the back band. And what I'm going to do is sew those all together. Let's move you back now so that you can see me sew that. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Whoops, I meant to change my basting stitch back. Okay, I'm going to clip these threads. Okay, and now as you see, I have all of this sandwiched in. If I'm going to, what I need to do is open this out so that we have the lining and the sidebar together, so you can see this. On the fashion fabric side, if you open it up, that's what it looks like. And then when you flip it on this side, you have the lining material and the power mesh. Now what I'm going to do is understitch, do a top stitch close to the seam allowance. I'm going to put this on my machine, make sure it's flat. And now let me cut this back. Looks like I stretched my fabric a little bit because I was rushing. But now you see how nice that looks. Let me just even this up. You have no seams exposed. All the seams are inside of the, they've been caught inside of the panels. So I like that tip. Thanks, Liz. Now we're going to move over to step 14. Okay, now for step 14, what they want you to do is take your picot elastic. I mean, you should have two sizes. You should have a 3/8 inch, which is this one right here. And you should also have a 1/2 inch, which is this larger one right here. They want you to actually sew the smaller 3/8 inch elastic along the top here, and the larger 1/2 inch along the bottom here. In order to do that, what they want you to do is measure the top part, the top part of this side band and the back band, sidebar and the back band. They want you to measure the top of it, and I'm going to do that here. Mine is 7 inches, and they want you to add 1 inch to that, so it's 8 inches. So I need to cut 2 of both of, for the top, 2 of the smaller 3/8 elastic by 8 inches. So this is what we're going to do here. 8 inches right there. So I'm going to fold this in half like that and cut it off. I should have brought my good scissors over here, and I have these little bitty snippers. They might not do the trick, but yeah, they did. And then we're going to cut that in half. Hopefully you saw that. We're going to cut this in half. So now I have one piece for the top of each of these. And now we're going to do the exact same thing for the bottom. So I'm going to measure my bottom piece. And my bottom piece is 10 inches, actually a little bit over 10. It's 10 and an eighth, so I'm going to go with 11 and an eighth. So we're going to take, let's throw this over here out of the way, and we're going to take our larger 1/2 inch, and we're going to measure it. It's going to be right here. That's 11 and an eighth, and we're going to fold that in half. And we're going to snip that right there. Put the extra over there out of our way. And we're just going to make sure that's level, and we're going to snip that. So we have 2 now for the bottom. And I'm going to try to get some threads off of there. And then we have 2 for, 1 for the top and 1 for the bottom. Now, what they want you to do is make sure that you have the soft side, because typically most of these have a very soft side, a real plush side, and one that's not so plush, and mine does. So they want you to have the plush side facing up. So, and you're going to sew it, with the scalloped edge facing this way. And the same thing with this one, the plush side up, and it's going to be sewed zigzag stitch along this edge without going over the picot edge. It's going to sew both of those. So I'm going to sew those, and I'll come right back. Okay guys, now that we've done that with step 14, as you see here, you can see here, I've actually stitched this close to the picot edge on both the 1/2 inch elastic and the top 3/8 inch elastic. Now what they want you to do is flip this over, and it's going to be hard for you to see here for mine, but they want you to cut back this part close to the zigzag stitching, just this part here, without cutting the elastic. And you can use some of those embroidery scissors or something like that, but I'm just going to use my big scissors here because it's a little bit easier for me to use them. I don't have a pair of those embroidery scissors, so I'm going to cut this close to, what I'm doing right now is cutting this close to the stitching. You can't see it, the stitching, at least I don't believe you can see it. I can't see it on the screen without cutting my elastic. You just want to cut this back so you can, you don't have any of this sticking out over your elastic. Is basically what you're doing here. So I cut that, and you're going to cut it on both sides. See what I did there? Put that over there, and I'm going to flip it and cut it on the top portion too now. And you don't want to cut your zigzag stitching, and you don't want to cut your elastic. Oops, my scissors. Maybe I should get a pair of those embroidery bill, I think they call them bill scissors or something like that. And they kind of look like, I'll put one up on the screen so you can see it, but they kind of look like a, I think they call them duck bill scissors. Okay, so now we have, it's kind of haphazard. I'm going to cut this big piece off here that's kind of hanging right here. There we go. So now we have it both trimmed on that side. Now we're going to move over to, and that was step 15. We're going to move to step 16 now. Okay, now we are moving on to step 16. What they want you to do is fold this over where you have that little bit of the picot edge sticking out just like that. And you want to flip it over, and you want to stitch it along this edge without going over to the edge, but close to it. They want you to zigzag that down. Now they tell you in a 3-step zigzag. I just use, I followed what Liz Sews does, and she didn't do the 3 steps. She didn't think it was necessary, and they could be doing it just for aesthetic purposes, just as a look. But for security, I can tell you, you don't need it. I am going to make my zigzag a little bit bigger than this. When I stitched these down, the zigzag stitch, I had a 2 millimeter width and a 2 millimeter length. I'm going to bring my stitch width up to a 3 to make it a little bit bigger. But that's the only change. So I'm going to fold this and fold this over now, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch it over the edge like this and show you. Making sure that that little peak is peeking, that little picot edge is sticking out like that. So you want to make sure you push it all the way up. And I'm going to change my stitch width, my zigzag, to a 3 to make it a little bit wider. And you want to go ahead and sew it close to the edge, but not go over the edge. And that's what it kind of looks like right there. And when you flip it over, that's what it looks like. See if I can bring it closer so you can see it. Okay, and now I'm going to do the bottom where there's a larger one, and turn that over and do the same thing. Okay, and again, I'm going to remind you guys, this is my muslin, so disregard. You want to use the same color stitching thread as your whatever you're doing. I'm just doing this right now as my muslin. So now that I've done it on this side, I don't know if you can see that well, but I'll bring it up so that you can see it. That's the stitching all done. Now I'm going to clip these ends, and I'm going to do the other side, and we'll move on to 17 after that. Okay, now we're ready for step 18 and 19, which are the straps. So you need to cut yourself 2 strips of strap elastic like this, and I have 2 of them. And we're going to put the strap through the actual slider with the shiny side up like this. And that's my shiny, you can see it, that's my shiny side, and that's the dull side. You're actually going to put this, and you guys excuse my nails here. Sorry that I didn't get a manicure for you guys, but I wanted to get this done for you. So you're going to bring it up through the slider and back through the other side of the slider. Just like this. Oh, come on, you can go through there. Of course, when you're trying to do this on camera, it's a lot harder than it is if I were doing it by myself. So that it looks like that. And just give yourself a little room to sew. But what you're going to do is you're going to secure that by stitching across it. And they say 2 rows of stitching. I don't think you need it, but if you're concerned about security, you should. I'm going to do 1 row of stitching, and I am going to I'm actually going to backtrack. I'm going to actually go back and forth. So I guess it would be a couple of stitches for I'm going to change my stitch length to a 3, and I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to go ahead and sew this. And I'm going to go back and forth one more time. There we go. Okay, we're going to clip this off. I'll do the other one off camera so you guys don't have to watch me do both of them. And now they want you to take, on the other, using the other side, they want you to take the ring, and again, with the shiny side up, just put it through here like that. Put the ring on, and then you want to take this side. Now remember, the dull side is on the inside. You're going to take the shiny side up, and you're going to bring it back through the slider just like that, and through the other side. Come on. It is a lot easier, but it's not this easy when I'm trying to do it on camera too. It's not that bad. I keep pulling it out. Come on. Coax it in. Okay, there we go. And that is going to be your strap. There we are. We have the ring right there, and that's your adjustable strap. Now it's time for us to, I'm going to do the other one, and then we're going to move over to attaching the straps to the actual bra. So there you are. Okay, now we're at step 20. They want you to take your strap that you have here that you made, and they want you to attach this end, not the end that has the loop, they want you to take this end and sew it along the back scoop edge of the, hopefully you can see that, along the back scoop edge here of the bra band. So starting at the edge here, and you want to keep it along this edge. You want to keep both edges along each other like that. Now I'm not going to use pins for this, but what they want you to use is regular zigzag, and you want to go close to the inside of this edge. So I'm going to put it here and sew this for you guys so you can see. And I need to change my machine back to the zigzag stitch. And I'm using a 2 millimeter length and a 2 millimeter width. Actually a 3. I'm going to use a 3 millimeter width for this one. And I'm going to go ahead and start this. And keeping it close to the edge, you should not stretch either one of these, this fabric or the strap. And I'm going to secure it here at the edge here because I want this nice and strong here, because this is the strap edge. Okay. And my strap is actually secured, as you see. I'm going to cut some of these threads out from the back here. Alright, that looks very nice. We don't have anything sticking out of the top edge, but if you did, you can trim that so it looks nice and neat across the top. And I'm going to do the other one, and I'll get right back to you. Okay guys, before I sew the strap onto here, as I mentioned, what you want to do, and I forgot to mention that to you, but before you sew the strap on, make sure that your hook and eye closure, and mine I'm actually using a recycled one, make sure that it fits before you sew your strap on, because if it's too large, you want to trim down this edge just a little bit to make it fit. If mine were up here a little bit, I would have trimmed it down just that little piece to make sure that it matched, but mine actually matched, so I was okay with that. But make sure before you sew on your strap that you make sure that your hook and eye closure matches. Okay, so now what we want to do is move on to step 21, which is sewing on your hook and eye closures. So I have mine here, and what you want to do is just open up that little pocket there. There's a little pocket, you can see there, a little pocket there. You want to open that up, and you want to put this inside of there, just like that, and make sure it's in on all sides. And I'm actually going to put this up here, and you should pin it if you like. Now at this point, it might be easier if you put a smaller foot on. I'm actually using a knit foot. I like the way that helps pull my fabrics through so that I don't have anything stopping. But I'm going to put a smaller foot on here so that I can do this zigzag without hitting any of these. Actually, mine might go through this. I think I'm going to use it the way it is. When I put the other side on, I may have to change my foot. So I'm going to insert this in here, lay it nice and flat, and then we're going to zigzag this, or you can use a straight stitch. I'm actually going to use the zigzag that I currently have on my machine. Okay, now that's all zigzagged on. I need to stitched on, and I need to cut these off. And sometimes I do get a little pucker in there, and if you get a little pucker in there, not to worry about it. Just if you want, you can take it off and redo it again. I didn't get one this time, so it ended up pretty nicely. This muslin, I have to say, is actually turning out pretty good so far. I got my fingers crossed. But now it's time to sew the other one to the other side. Now when you do that, you want to make sure that you have them facing the correct way. So this one goes like this, with the hooks down. And you want to do it that way, because then when you go to hook it, it hooks like that. So make sure you have them in the correct direction. So I am going to change my foot, and I'm going to stitch the hook part onto the back band. Okay everyone, now we're at step 23, where we're actually going to sew our bridge and as well as our band to the cups. So we're going to start right there. Now, as you saw before, this top edge here, let's put this where you can see it. This top edge here is the top of the bridge, which is going to align with the top of the cups. And we're going to be sewing it to the cups only to the attached band that we put on here, the attached seam allowance, not the band, the attached seam allowance. And I use bias binding for mine. But what we're going to do, right sides together, we're actually going to pin this, and I am going to pin because I want to make sure that that edge is aligned with the top edge. And I'm going to back tack here too, because there will be no other cross seam allowance that's going to secure that. So I'm going to want to back tack there to make sure it stays in place. So I'm going to pin this, and I'm pinning it right to the seam allowance, the attached seam allowance only. And we're going to do the same thing with the band, and I'll show you that right now. Okay, now we're going to grab the band, because we want the band to start right at the bottom of this seam allowance here. We're going to go ahead, right sides together, and you want to make sure you align. Hopefully you can see that. Right sides together, the top of the band, I'm actually going to align it with the top of the arm elastic. So both picot elastics actually match. So I'm going to pin that there. So far this, oops, toss that away. I bent my pin. I use these very fine pins, and I got them at Joann Fabrics, but they're very fine and they work really well with my sewing of bras. I really like them a lot. But when I was trying to pin through that thick elastic, it was bending my pin, and I ended up having to toss it because this is made for the finer. They work very well with the finer lingerie elastics. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Okay, well, you can still see me pinning that. And I'm just pinning it to that attached seam allowance again. And pin it all the way down. And these pins are they're super sharp and very fine. I want to make sure I align all of that perfectly. And you asked me how I know these are super sharp. I've stuck myself many times with them. Okay, and the last one is attached. Now, here, and then I have to attach the other cup. But when you go to sew this, starting at the top, your 1/4 inch, what you want to do is continue your 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across, even though you're not attaching anything, all the way across to the top of the band, or vice versa, from the top of the band all the way across to this part. And the reason why is they want to have that 1/4 inch seam allowance stitch here as a guide when you're putting on your wire casing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attach these and then I'm going to come right back. Okay, everyone, now it's time for step 24. We're going to sew the underwire casing to the bra. Now, what they tell you in the instructions is to take a piece of your underwire casing, and you want to measure it, leaving yourself 1 inch. Let's move this over here so you can see it. All right, from the top edge, you can see here, the top edge of your bra, you want to, leaving yourself 1 inch, you want to line it around the bottom of the cup. Can you see that? Yeah, around the bottom of the cup. All the way, I'm using that stitch line that we left before, and up to the top, and you leave 1 inch on both edges. So 1 inch there and 1 inch here, and then you cut 2 pieces like that. And that's exactly what I did. So I have 2 pieces. So what you're going to do with the plush side up, and if you guys, I don't know if you can see this because again, black is really hard to record, but this is the side, my side that's not plush, and this is my plush side. Plush side up, you want to, and with the right side of the cup up, so you can see the seam allowance, you want to make sure your seam allowance is down this way, but you want to start to pin it here. I'm not going to pin it, but I'm going to go ahead and sew it on, but I'm going to show you guys how you do it. So you're running it around here, and when you get to this part, make sure that this is up so you can see the seam allowance underneath there, and you want to sew that all the way around this cup. And that's what I'm going to do to both the cups, and I'll come right back. Okay, I decided to let you see me sew one of the underwires to the cup. So with the right side of the cup up like that, I expose my seam allowance, leaving 1 inch above the actual seam line. And I have this pressed right up against, I don't know if you guys can see that, I have a stitching line right here. That's going to be my guide. That's the seam allowance where I sewed the band onto the cup. And I kept it going all around the cup as they suggested. So that's going to be the line where I actually place this right up against that line. And you're going to be sewing a very slant 1/16 of an inch along the edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up here, leaving my 1 inch tail up there. And I'm going to go ahead and start to sew this 1/16 of an inch seam allowance right up against that 1/4 inch seam allowance line. And I am going to back tack at the beginning to make sure this is secure. And then keeping this right against that line. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit better so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm going to keep this right up against that guide, that stitching guide, and I'm going to sew a 1/16 of an inch, and hopefully we won't have any boo-boos here. So that's right along here. Okay, let me cut some of these threads from here and I will show you what it looks like. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, and adjust it. Okay, this is what it looks like now. We actually have that underwire casing sewn right along the edge, and it's going to enclose the seam allowance so you won't see that once we tack that down. Okay, now it's time for step 25. We're going to close off the underwire casing. So this is the inside of the bra where we sewed the casings. Now what you want to do is you want to turn this flat inside like that, as if we were going to sew this down now. But you want to flip it over to the other side where you can see this, how it's going to line up. And you want to put a mark right across there. Hopefully you guys can see that. Right across there. Because this is where you're going to bar tack. You're going to cross stitch 2 rows across here. That's going to close off this underwire casing so that when we insert it, it won't go any further than that. And you only want to sew, you don't want to sew through the bra, you only want to sew through, there we go, just the casing itself. So I'm going to do that and I'll come right back. Actually, I can do it while you're watching. It's such a small one. I'm using small stitches here, and you're just going to go back and forth until you close it off. Now that's straight stitching back and forth, and I'm going to trim off some of these threads here. Okay, now let's do the other side. And then once we finish that, we can trim those away, but I will show you that in a moment. Getting some of those threads off are a little bit tough here. Okay, let's do the other side. And I'm actually bar tacking right on my little mark I made. I don't know if you guys can see that. I have a little white mark right there. Everything's twisted here. There we go. Let's move this other bra out of the way. Underwire, I should say, not bra. That right on there. This one is proving to be a little more difficult to get in for me, but we will make it happen. There we go. And you remember, you're only sewing through the underwire casing. Okay, let's trim those threads there as well. And then at this point, what you want to do is trim off. Let's turn this to the right side so that you can see those. And you want to trim off the excess here. And then use fray check on the top edge of that. Whoops, kind of went flying. We'll get that later. But that's the way it's going to look. Okay, I'm going to put some fray check on that, and I'll come back with the next step. Okay, now it's time for step 26. We're going to sew the underwire casing to the down to the actual bra. But before I do that, I wanted to mention, for those of you who don't know what fray check is, I mentioned in the last step, you're going to put fray check on the top of the underwire casing, right along the top of the bra here. Just the underwire casing. This is fray check. And it's something that you use on areas where you don't want your fabric to fray. If you're done with it and that's the way the edge is going to look, you want it to stay smooth. I'll put a better picture up there. But that's what I use on the very top of the underwire casing only, and you let that dry. So now going back to step 26, we're going to sew this underwire casing down. Now we're going to actually turn it down like that, where it's going to enclose the seam allowance here, and here's all of my seam allowance. It's just going to fold down and it's going to enclose that. Now, and you're going to sew a 1/16 right along the edge of this underwire casing. Now in the instructions they tell you with right sides up, but it's going to be hard for you to see where the edge of that is if you're sewing it from the right side. So I'm going to sew mine from the inside so I can see where that edge is. So I'm going to do that now, and remember, it's 1/16 of an inch right along that edge. Make sure nothing else is in the way. And make sure you bar tack at the beginning so that it stays nice and secure. Okay, now we've sewn this. We've sewn the underwire casing all the way down. This is what it looks like on the other side. Let's trim some of these threads away. Now, as far as the needles, my sewing machine needles, let's cut some of these threads away. I want to let you guys know that I'm using Microtech needles, and they look like this. I'm using the 8012, and that's a Microtech, and I got that tip from Liz Sews. I like these needles for sewing my bras. They work very, very well. However, sewing this foam bra and sewing that underwire through the foam, I noticed that I had a few skip stitches in here, and you might want to play around with your needle when you're working with your muslin. And this is my muslin, so I'm going to play around with my needles the next time I get ready to make this bra, just to see if a different needle will give me different results, because my stitch line is skipping stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other cup, and I'll come right back. Okay, we're getting down there now. It is time for step 27. We're going to be inserting the underwire. Now, if you didn't stay along the edge when you sewed your underwire casing to the cup, if you didn't stay along the edges of this thing is going to be difficult to get in. And I have to tell you, for me, sewing bras, this is the most difficult part for me, is inserting this underwire, because if you don't do it correctly, it can be very, very frustrating, because they're difficult to push in anyways. But let's go ahead, and usually the underwires have, and I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can, they have two colors. The colored, they have a white tip and then a colored tip. The colored tip always goes to the inside of the bra, to the front of the bra. So you want to start with the colored tip from the back end. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and insert the underwire. And you want to make sure that you get it right in the middle of the casing. And we're going to go right through there. I'm going to put this in. And you have to make sure that you have your wires are actually the right length for the cup, because in this particular pattern they want you to have 3/8 inch room on each end of this wire. Once you insert it into the wire casing, they want you to have 3/8 of an inch room in here before the wire reaches the top, and that's to give the wire some place so that it doesn't start to poke out. And that's important with these bras, because if you've ever had a ready-to-wear bra and you've had it for some time and then all of a sudden the wires start to come out, that's why there wasn't enough play in there in the beginning. My wires are a little bit long for this particular bra, so and this was my last one, and it's a recycled one, so I'm going to have to order some more. But make sure you order them the right size. Now mine just fits in there. I just have very little room to actually bar tack across and close off this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure it's all the way down in there, and it is. And then you're going to just sew back and forth 2 rows to secure that underwire. You want to make sure it's all the way down there, because you don't want to hit your needle on that wire, that's for sure. There we go. I want to make sure it's down there, because sometimes it slides back up, and you want to make sure, I want to make sure it's not in there. And you want to sew right along the edge. Okay, then we're going to trim off some of these threads. Hate little threads sticking out all over the place, especially when they're contrasting color. Get those all there. And now we can trim that rest of that off, and you want to trim it so it's close to the picot edge, but don't cut through the picot edge so they line up. This is my muslin, you guys, so it's a little not put together. And one of the things I didn't do, and you'll see here, I ended up only bar tacking the underwire casing on one of mine. So I ended up having, after I had attached it, trying to bar tack it again. Make sure you bar tack these clothes on the inside before you attach it to the bra. Okay, so my wires are all in now, and the seam allowance, it looks pretty good. So at this point, if you're following along with me, you should have this as well. Now, some of you guys who are real keen might have seen that little hole there. Well, if you look closely at that, what that is my fabric, my fashion fabric. This was scraps, and I actually had cut the 2 pieces together, but underneath there was a V cut in one. I decided to just leave it there. This is a knit, it's a muslin, it's not gonna go anywhere, so that's what you're seeing there. It's a little boo-boo. So now it's time for us to move to step 28 and 29, and we're almost there. We only have 28, 29, and 30 to go. Okay guys, now we're at, actually we're not at step 28. We finished 28 by bar tacking everything, by bar tacking your underwires down. So we took care of all of that. Now what we need to do is attach the front of our straps. So you have the strap here, and you want to make sure that it's straight. Make sure it's not twisted when you go to do it in the front. So you want to follow that line all the way up, and that tab that was on the front here, you want to put it back through the loop, your ring, not your loop, through your ring. Keep this up where you guys can see what I'm doing. And you want to pull that all the way down. And on the underside, you want to align those two together like that. And you want to sew a bar tack right through the fabric right here. Just sew right across that to secure it. And you want to do at least 2 rows back and forth to secure it. Cut off these threads, and it's all done. Nice and secure. So you can cut that extra tip off. And at this point, guys, your bra is all done. Now, what you want to do here, to finish it off, you want to put some fray tack, I can't get that word out right, some fray tack on the top edge of your underwire, underneath the arm. That's the place where you didn't put your fray tack. You want to put a little fray tack there. And on the other side as well, right at the top of the underwire casing, at the underarm. We already did the center front. All right, and you let that dry. The other thing that you could do, if you like, is, here's that bra. Let's turn this so you can see it. Here's that bra. It's all put together, and you can put a little bow in the center if you like. This is a muslin for me, so I'm not going to do that, but it is all done. There is your bra. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And again, thank you for watching.